Most people think property developers become rich by simply building houses. John used to believe that too, but after watching the Australian property market for years, he realized something strange. Some ugly suburbs suddenly exploded in value, while some beautiful suburbs barely moved. Some old, broken houses became worth millions, even though the house itself looked terrible. That confusion stayed in John's mind for years. Eventually, he realized developers are not really buying houses first. They are buying future potential. Every Saturday morning, while most people relaxed, John drove through suburbs around, looking for clues others ignored. He was not searching for luxury kitchens or modern bathrooms. He searched for large blocks, corner lots, wide streets, old homes with big backyards, future train stations, road upgrades, shopping center projects, and growing suburbs. Because developers know something most people miss. When infrastructure improves, people usually follow later. And when more people move into an area, housing demand often rises after that. That's why developers pay close attention to future infrastructure plans, like roads, schools, hospitals, transport, and shopping centers. These things slowly change suburbs over time. One night, John opened council zoning maps for the first time. At first, it looked confusing and boring. Maps, planning rules, government documents. But slowly he realized zoning changes everything. Zoning decides what land can become. One house, two homes, townhouses, apartments, or commercial buildings. Sometimes a simple zoning change can dramatically increase land value. That's why developers study council plans so carefully. They are trying to understand what areas may become more valuable in the future before everyone else notices. Then John started using Google Maps and satellite view every night. He slowly scanned suburbs around looking for opportunities. Most people saw boring streets. John started seeing future possibilities. One Saturday morning, John drove into an older suburb most investors ignored. The shops looked tired and the houses looked old. But John noticed several small things happening quietly underneath the surface. Roadworks nearby, a shopping center expansion, young families moving into the area, and new development signs appearing. The suburb still looked average today, but it felt like something was starting to change. Then John saw the property. An old weathered house sitting on a large corner block. Broken fence, weeds everywhere, faded paint. Most buyers would reject it immediately. But John was no longer looking at houses like a normal buyer. He was studying the land underneath it. The block was large, the street was wide. It sat close to future infrastructure, and nearby zoning discussions had already started quietly. For the first time, John truly understood how developers think. They don't just look at what exists today. They try to imagine what the area might become in 5 or 10 years. But John had already learned one painful lesson years earlier. Good stories do not always become good investments. Earlier in his life, he bought a property too quickly because he became emotional. At first, everything looked perfect. Cheap land, big dreams, good suburb. But then council approvals slowed down, construction costs increased, and delays piled up. Slowly, the project became stressful. That mistake changed him forever. Now John checked everything carefully before buying. That night, he opened flood maps, bushfire overlays, environmental restrictions, subdivision rules, utility access maps, and council planning documents. Because one hidden issue can destroy an entire project. Then came the feasibility study. This is where many beginner investors fail. Developers survive by focusing on numbers, not emotions. John calculated purchase price, construction costs, interest payments, holding costs, council fees, and selling costs. Then he asked difficult questions. What if interest rates rise? What if construction slows down? What if property prices stop growing? Because smart developers prepare for bad situations too. At the same time, John started talking to local people, agents, builders, town planners, and long-term residents, because sometimes local knowledge is more valuable than online research. One local agent quietly told him, "More families are moving into this area now." That sentence stayed in John's mind, because families slowly change suburbs. First families arrive, then cafes improve, schools improve, businesses expand, and prices often rise later. Most people only notice growth after prices already explode. Developers try to spot growth while areas still look ordinary. For weeks, John kept researching the same property. Most people would become impatient, but developers understand patience matters. A bad deal can trap you for years. A good deal can change your future. Eventually, the research became clear. The suburb had growing infrastructure, population movement, development potential, and manageable risk. For the first time in months, John felt calm. And calm mattered more than excitement. 3 weeks later, John bought the property. Friends thought he was crazy. Why buy that ugly old house? Why not buy somewhere already successful? John smiled quietly because he knew something most people realize too late. By the time an area feels safe and obvious, much of the growth may already be gone. At first, nothing happened. No headlines, no instant profit, no dramatic change. The old house still looked terrible, but slowly the area started changing. Road upgrades accelerated, more families moved in, builders became busy, new cafes appeared, and more development applications arrived. Then one day, John drove through the suburb again and realized something shocking. The same streets people once ignored were now being called up and coming. Investors started arriving late, property prices increased, and builders became busy. People suddenly asked, how did this suburb grow so fast? John knew the answer. Growth rarely happens suddenly. Most people simply notice it late. Eventually, the old house came down and new homes were built. People driving past admired the finished project. Some called John lucky, but they never saw the council maps, the feasibility studies, the risk calculations, or the years of research behind that one decision. And that's when John realized something powerful. Most people buy what already looks successful. Developers try to buy the future before everyone else sees it.